A young child from New Hampshire disappeared in 1991 during his own birthday celebration. His mother left him playing with the other friends. When she returned to check on him, he had vanished, gone without any clue. Yet a decade later, she's browsing a community sale when she notices something strangely familiar on a table, a belonging of her missing child, something she thought she'd never see again. The late afternoon light stretched long shadows across the tree-lined avenues of Cedar Park, New Hampshire. It was one of those ideal autumn Saturdays in September when the leaves had just started to change, turning the suburban streets into a tapestry of amber and gold. The town, known for its neat white fences and local fairs, still held that small town feel where neighbors waved at each other from their porches. Emily Larson sat in her living room, staring at the blank spot on the wall where a family portrait once hung. She had taken it down years ago because seeing Michael's bright grin was too painful. The doorbell rang, jolting her from her thoughts. "Em, it's me!" Olivia's voice called through the door. "You ready?" Emily opened it to find her friend standing there with the determined expression she'd worn all week. Olivia had been insistent about getting her out of the house, suggesting they check out the Maple Creek Community Yard sale just 3 blocks away. "I'm not sure I can," Emily said, but she was already reaching for her coat. "You need to get some fresh air," Olivia insisted, her tone gentle but firm. "It's been a decade, Em. You can't stay like this forever." 10 years. Emily repeated the words aloud. 10 years since Michael, her 8-year-old boy, had vanished at his own party. The investigation had gone cold long ago. The police had no leads, and Emily had lived in a constant haze of sorrow and anxiety, ever since. "I've always liked yard sales," Emily admitted softly. "They feel like time capsules. Those old things remind me of better days." Olivia's face brightened. "Exactly. That's why we're here. When was the last time we did something together outside your house? I can't even remember." As they walked to Olivia's car, Emily noticed how much the neighborhood still looked the same. The same oak trees lined the streets. The same houses stood with their well-kept gardens. Life had moved on for everyone else, but for Emily, it was as if time had frozen on that dreadful day. They drove the short distance to Maple Creek, where the yard sale was already in full swing. It was a town-wide event with families setting up tables on lawns and driveways, eager to part with things they no longer needed. "Look at this," Olivia said as they parked. "The whole block is in on it." They began wandering through the sprawling sale, taking their time examining the various items. Vintage clothing hung on makeshift racks. Dusty books were piled in cardboard boxes, and old kitchen tools gleamed in the afternoon sun. Emily had to admit it felt good to be out. The fresh air, the chatter around them, the ordinary bustle. It was oddly soothing. They stopped at a few tables, chatting with sellers and inspecting things. Then Emily saw it. At first she thought her eyes must be deceiving her. Amid a pile of children's books and toys on one table, something blue caught her eye. She frowned and stepped closer, her heart starting to pound. It was a handheld gaming device, its color unmistakably turquoise. But it wasn't just any device. As she lifted it with trembling fingers, she spotted the 3 cartoon stickers, a mouse character in the center and 2 others flanking it. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is it?" Olivia asked, noticing her friend's sudden stillness. "This is Michael's," Emily said, her voice steadier now but quivering with emotion. "This belonged to my son. Look at those stickers. They match exactly." Memories flooded back. Michael's friend had given him that device for his 7th birthday the year before he disappeared. He'd taken it everywhere, and Emily remembered how she'd pleaded for him not to bring it to school. "Are you certain?" Olivia asked gently. "Absolutely," Emily said, clutching the device. No one else could have this exact device with the same stickers in that same arrangement. "Can I help you, ladies?" an older man said as he came up to them, his friendly grin fading when he saw Emily's panicked expression. "Where did you find this?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. Her hands trembled so badly she almost dropped it. The man reflexively caught it before it fell. "Whoa there! You okay?" "This is my son's," Emily said, her voice rising. "This is my missing son's device. Where is he? Where's my boy? Please, if you know where Michael is, tell me so I can see him again." Her frantic plea drew attention from nearby shoppers and sellers. People turned to stare, whispering, "Behind their hands." The older man's expression shifted from confusion to hesitation, then to fear. "I don't know what you mean," he said, yanking the device from her hands and shoving it into his coat pocket. "No!" Emily cried out. His actions confirmed her worst fears. "That's my son's. Why are you hiding it?" Calm down," Olivia said, touching her friend's shoulder, but Emily was beyond consolation. The stress of that moment, on top of a decade of grief, overwhelmed her. She stumbled and fell to the ground. Gasps rose from the crowd. "I'm calling the police," the older man announced, pulling out his phone. Within moments, an officer's car screeched onto the street. A young officer stepped out and hurried over. "What's happening here?" The older man spoke first. "This woman went berserk, claiming this device I'm selling belongs to her son. She tried to grab it without proof." "Sir, may I inspect the device?" the officer asked. The man crossed his arms. "Legally, I don't have to show you anything. It's my property. I have privacy rights." "I'm asking you to cooperate," the officer pressed. "I know my rights," the man snapped, shielding his coat pocket. Emily, still on the ground with Olivia's help, looked up at the officer. "Please contact the detective on my son's case, Detective Gregory Baxter. Michael disappeared a decade ago." The officer radioed for backup and to notify the detective. Soon, more patrol cars arrived, accompanied by an unmarked dark sedan. Detective Baxter, a man in his late 50s with graying hair, stepped out and approached Emily. "Mrs. Larson," he said softly, "what's going on?" "The device," Emily said, pointing to the older man. "He has Michael's device, the turquoise one with the 3 stickers. Detective Baxter's face grew grave. He turned to the older man. "Sir, I'm Detective Gregory Baxter. I've worked Michael Larson's case for 10 years. The boy was 8 when he disappeared. He'd be 18 now. We have a record of his belongings, including his favorite gizmo, a turquoise handheld with 3 stickers. He reached into a folder and pulled out old photos. "These are pictures of Michael with that device. Now, I need you to hand it over so we can compare." Another officer spoke up suddenly. "Wait, aren't you Thomas Reed? Retired Sergeant Thomas Reed?" The man straightened. The officer continued, "Sir, you were a respected cop here in Maple Creek. You're aware of proper procedures." Reluctantly, Thomas Reed reached into his coat and handed over the device. Detective Baxter took it carefully and compared it to the photos. The match was unmistakable. "Where did you acquire this, Mr. Reed?" the detective asked. "I bought it at a swap meet years ago," Reed replied quickly. "That's a lie." Emily spat, Olivia still supporting her. "He's involved in my son's disappearance." "Ma'am, please," Detective Baxter said. Then he faced Reed. "We'll need to search your residence." "Fine," Reed said, jaw clenched. "Do what you have to." Officers began with Reed's nearby car and the boxes he'd brought to the sale. They rummaged through everything, but found nothing suspicious. "We need to search your home next," Detective Baxter said. "Will you cooperate?" Reed sighed. "Whatever, but keep that woman off my lawn." The group moved to their vehicles. Detective Baxter helped Emily and Olivia into his car. Reed led the procession to his house, just a block away, down a quiet side street. Emily's heart pounded as they drove. After 10 years of dead ends, could this at last be a breakthrough? Or would it be another heartbreak in a case that had already shattered her so many times? The autumn sun was dipping low as they pulled up to Reed's modest two-story home. Its pale siding and dark shutters gave no hint of the secrets inside. "Wait here," Detective Baxter told Emily and Olivia as the officers prepared to enter. They remained in the car, watching through the windows as officers moved deliberately through rooms, checking closets, peeking into corners, searching for any clue tying this place to Michael's disappearance. "It'll be okay," Olivia whispered, squeezing Emily's hand. Emily couldn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the house, praying they'd find something, anything, to lead her to her son. Time dragged. 20 minutes, 40, nearly an hour. Finally, Detective Baxter emerged and walked back to the car, his face unreadable. "We have found no proof," he said quietly as Emily rolled down the window. "No sign that a young boy lived or stayed here. Absolutely nothing." Emily's heart sank. She'd been so sure that the device led them here. The detective held up a folder. "Thomas Reed did serve as a police sergeant, retired with full honors." Officer Martinez, the one who had recognized Reed, stepped up. "Ma'am, if I might speak frankly, Mr. Reed was well respected in this town for decades. I worked with him briefly before he retired. I can't believe he'd harm a child." "But that device," Emily whispered, "we can't prove it's Michael's without DNA." Detective Baxter explained, "We couldn't find any usable DNA. As it stands, we can't treat Mr. Reed as a suspect." They walked back to Reed, who stood on his porch with arms crossed, looking wounded. "Mr. Reed," Detective Baxter said, "we'd like to keep the device as evidence." Reed waved them off. "Go ahead. I was going to sell it anyway. I would have sold it to you if you hadn't so rudely accused me." "It belongs to my son," Emily said firmly. "It's evidence. I don't have to buy what's mine." Detective Baxter stepped between them. "Mr. Reed, can you tell us when and who you bought this for?" Reed shifted uncomfortably. "I can't recall. It was at a swap meet. I only know I bought it for my—" He hesitated, and Emily saw it. He'd meant to say son. Instead, he said, "My nephew." Emily's eyes widened. He almost admitted the truth. Detective Baxter caught the moment too. "Mrs. Larson," Detective Baxter said, "please come with us to the station to give your official statement." Emily nodded and turned to Olivia. "I'll go with them alone." Olivia pulled her close. "Call me if you need anything. Anything at all." Emily climbed into the car, leaving Olivia on the sidewalk. As they drove away, Emily watched Reed in the rearview mirror, still standing on his porch, talking with officers. The police station loomed ahead, a brick building that had served the community for years. Emily had spent too much time there, first for the initial investigation, then for updates that gradually stopped. Inside, she was led into a small interview room and began recounting the day's events. The officer, taking notes, typed carefully, occasionally pausing for clarification. When she finished, she signed forms, her hand cramping from writing her name repeatedly. "I'd like to see that device again," she blurted. The officer looked uncertain but made a call. Minutes later, a forensic expert arrived with the device sealed inside an evidence bag. "Let's examine it," the technician said gently. She was a young woman with kind eyes, attentive to Emily's need. They moved to a lab area where the technician opened the bag, inserted 2 batteries, and powered on the device. The familiar startup chime sounded, and the bright screen lit up. "It still works fine," the technician observed. "There's a cartridge inside." Emily leaned forward as the technician carefully removed the cartridge, reading the faded label. "That's Michael's," she said, voice shaking just slightly. "It's his favorite game," she added, tears in her eyes. "He took it everywhere. We can try to extract fingerprints, timestamps, and any trace of DNA," the technician said. but after a decade of handling, chances are slim. Emily nodded, acknowledging the truth, but refusing to accept. Indeed, she watched as they repackaged the device, treating it as sacred, perhaps the only link to her son. "You should go get some rest," Detective Baxter said when they finished. "It's been emotionally exhausting. We can arrange for an officer to escort you." Emily considered the offer. She was exhausted, more so than she could ever remember. The roller coaster of hope and despair had drained her. "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you." In the back of the car heading home, Emily couldn't shake the suspicion that Reed knew far more than he was admitting. That hesitation when he almost said, "my son," echoed in her mind. And the device, how could it be anything other than Michael's? The officer sitting beside her tried small talk, hoping to ease her mind. But Emily barely heard him. Her thoughts were back at the yard sale, still clutching that device, still picturing those 3 stickers that Michael had carefully applied, his little tongue poking out in concentration. "We're here," the officer said, pulling up at her house. Emily stepped out, thanked him, and walked into her home on Cedar Park Lane. Once inside, fatigue hit her like a wave. Her legs trembled, and she leaned against the wall for support. Moving almost on autopilot, she made her way to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. While waiting for the kettle to boil, she sank into a chair and buried her face in her hands. What was supposed to be a simple outing had become a disaster. As guilt rose, she wondered, had she overreacted, made a scene unnecessarily? She pictured the yard sale crowd watching her collapse, accusing a retired cop of terrible things. The kettle whistled. She poured hot water over a tea bag and watched the color darken in the cup. She sipped, barely tasting it, mind racing. Unable to stay put, she picked up the phone and dialed Olivia. Olivia answered after one ring. "Are you okay? How did it go?" "Are you still at the sale?" Emily asked, avoiding the question. "Yes, but I'm heading out soon. I need to go back," Emily said. "I have to apologize to Thomas Reed for the way I behaved." Please don't torture yourself," Olivia said, concern heavy in her voice. "Not like that," Emily insisted. "I feel awful. I want to say I'm sorry for accusing him." There was a pause. "Are you sure that's wise?" Olivia asked. "Please," Emily said. "I need to do this." "All right," Olivia sighed. "I'll come get you." True to her word, Olivia arrived within 10 minutes. Emily climbed into the car, thankful for her friend's unwavering support. They drove back toward Maple Creek, the sun now lower in the sky. Emily checked her watch. It was around 3:45. The sale definitely would be winding down now. As they parked, they saw sellers packing up. Emily spotted Reed at his car, loading boxes into his trunk. He moved with sharp, agitated motions, and even from a distance, she could see he was angry and frustrated. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Olivia asked one last time. "Yes," Emily said firmly, though her heart raced. They approached Reed's car. He looked up and straightened, his face hardening. "What now?" he barked. "What do you want?" Emily took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. I overreacted today. I shouldn't have made a scene. I'm sorry." Reed stared at her for a long moment. His expression softened slightly, though he still looked guarded. "I hope the neighbors didn't get the wrong impression after this morning," he said coldly. "I've lived here quietly for years. I don't need this drama." "I understand," Emily said softly. "I truly am sorry." Reed slammed his trunk shut. "Now go. I have to grab the rest of my items." He walked away without another word, leaving Emily and Olivia standing near his car. They returned to their own vehicle. "You did what you could," Olivia said kindly as they sat in the car. Before they could pull away, a bright green Volkswagen Beetle rolled up near Reed's vehicle. A young man, maybe in his late 20s, stepped out and started loading boxes from Reed's table into his car. "That's curious," Olivia murmured. They watched as Reed shoved a large box toward the younger man, who seemed upset. Papers and small toys tumbled out of the box as it fell open. The young man knelt to pick them up, hurriedly stuffing everything back inside. Olivia rolled down her window slightly, and indistinct words drifted to them. "I don't care, and not mine." She caught, "For your mother's sake, just leave." The young man shook his head, clearly frustrated. He loaded the box into the Beetle and drove off before they could react. "Maybe that's Reed's son," Emily whispered. "I heard him say something about mother." "I think so," Olivia agreed. "But why just that box?" Emily's mind raced. It looked full of kids' toys. If that's his, then maybe the device was his too. She turned to Olivia with urgency. "Maybe we could learn something if we talked to him." "Follow him?" Olivia said doubtfully. "I don't like being stalkers, Em. Besides, he's already gone." "Please," Emily pleaded. "I can't let this go. If we call the police, they might not believe us." Olivia stared at her desperate friend and sighed heavily. "Fine. We'll see where he goes. Maybe we can talk to him, but we won't cross any lines." "Okay," Emily agreed. "Thank you, Olivia." Olivia turned the car and pulled out of the lot, keeping an eye out for the green Beetle. It wasn't hard to spot on the road. Olivia followed at a safe distance so as not to draw attention. Soon, the Beetle's turn signal blinked. "He's turning," Emily said. They watched as it entered a parking lot in front of what looked like a themed novelty shop. The building was painted black with purple accents and Halloween decorations in the windows. It seemed tucked at the edge of town in a small commercial area. "Darn it," Olivia said. She had missed the turn and was stuck in the wrong lane. She needed to find a place to turn around. Emily watched anxiously as the Beetle pulled into the lot. Olivia found a spot to safely loop the car around a few blocks away. "Hope he's still here," she said as they approached again, this time in the correct lane. But as they neared the lot, the Beetle was already backing out at a fast pace. It came so close that Olivia had to slam on the brakes to avoid a crash. "Who drives like that?" Olivia exclaimed. "That was reckless." Emily asked, "Should we keep following?" Olivia gripped the wheel. "It was too risky, but let's see where he goes." They trailed the Beetle, though now it sped through traffic, weaving between cars in a way that made it impossible to keep up safely. Then they heard the clang of a railroad crossing. The barriers were already closing as the Beetle zipped through them. Olivia skidded to a halt behind the lowered gates. "Oh no," Emily said, tension in her voice, as a long freight train rumbled by. "Every car feels like forever." "It's a long one," Olivia said, drumming her fingers. They sat in silence, knowing the Beetle was getting farther away with each passing second. Eventually, the train passed and the gates went up. Olivia accelerated and pressed on, scanning for the green car. They reached an intersection where roads branched three ways and the Beetle was nowhere in sight. Olivia pulled over to the shoulder. "I'm sorry, Em. We lost him." Emily sighed, looking out at the darkening sky. "It's okay. We followed him far enough. Maybe it doesn't matter. We should tell the police about him being there." "Agreed," Olivia said, pulling the car around. They headed back toward Maple Creek and passed by the novelty shop. Emily studied it as they drove by. "Maybe we should check inside," she said suddenly. "Why?" Olivia asked. "What could we do in there?" Olivia glanced at the sign above the entrance, "Nightmare Party Supply." Her expression softened. "Well, since we're here anyway, why not? Halloween is in a few weeks, and I need decorations for my nephew's birthday. We were supposed to have a nice afternoon, remember? This might help." "Maybe you're right," Emily said, her voice wistful. "I'd look around if Michael was still with me." Olivia turned into the lot and found a spot. They got out and headed for the shop's entrance. A young clerk crouched by the storefront, smoking a cigarette. He looked up as they approached. "Hey," he said, raising his cigarette. "Give me a minute." Emily and Olivia pushed through the heavy glass door. Inside, the store was unlike anything in this quiet town. Shelves were stocked with horror costumes, vampires, werewolves, creatures of every kind. Latex masks hung from pegs, their hollow eyes staring at customers. "Wow," Olivia said, picking up a bottle of fake blood. "They really go all out for Halloween." Fog machines sat on display, and animatronic figures jumped at them as they passed, making Olivia yelp. "This place is intense," Emily commented, though her thoughts were on what Reed's son was doing here. They browsed. Olivia eventually picked out a purple witch outfit sprinkled with silver stars, perfect for her nephew. "He'll love this," she said, carrying it toward the counter. At the register, the clerk was still lingering outside. Through the window, they saw him finishing his smoke. Olivia placed the costume on the counter and sighed. "I'll be right back," she said as she headed out to find the clerk. But Emily, ever polite, leaned over the counter to retrieve the costume when it slid backward onto the cash register. As she reached, her eyes caught an open laptop screen playing a paused video. She recognized the low-resolution footage immediately. The costume draped half on the keyboard. Emily tried not to stare, but her hand brushed the keyboard and the video began playing. The clip showed a dark outdoor scene, trees and shadows in dim light. The camera wavered through the underbrush until a face suddenly appeared. "What do you think?" the man in the video asked before it cut off. Emily frowned. Despite the grainy image, she was sure it was the man they'd glimpsed at Maple Creek. At that moment, the front door chimed. Olivia re-entered with the store clerk trailing behind. They both looked annoyed. Olivia had clearly disturbed his smoke break. "What are you doing?" the clerk demanded, voice tense as he spotted Emily behind the counter. "I'm not snooping," Emily said quickly, straightening up. "I was just trying to get the costume that fell on your desk." The clerk lunged for his laptop, face turning red. "Who are you? Did you touch my computer?" Emily held up her hands. "No, I was only reaching for my friend's costume." She paused. "Who was that man who came earlier? Which one?" the clerk snapped, already clicking to close the video. "You know, the one with the green beetle." The clerk's demeanor changed, becoming defensive. "Did you ruin my laptop?" he accused, slamming the device closed. Emily kept talking. "My son vanished 10 years ago. Why's his name here?" The clerk recoiled. "You're crazy. Lots of people are named Michael. It's common. It's just for a party." "But I saw the man in that video," Emily said, determined. "It was the same guy from the yard sale." Olivia stepped forward calmly. "Do you recognize him? The police are still looking for Michael. We just found a lead pointing to his father." The clerk turned pale, shaking. "What does that matter to me? I just sell stuff." Emily leaned in. "You had a clip of him and seemed to know him. What did you mean when you mentioned Michael?" Olivia flashed Emily a glance, then back at the clerk. "Evidence we found this morning suggests that man or his family may be linked to Michael's disappearance. Now we have a new lead here. We need to alert the authorities about this video and the chat message on your screen." The clerk looked terrified. "Please don't call the police. The man's name is Eric. We were talking about a horror event at a family property. It's just a party plan." He reopened the laptop with shaking fingers. "Look, I only sold him masks and props. I didn't know any of that." Emily and Olivia leaned in to read a chat window on screen. The messages mentioned a surprise for Michael, referencing elaborate, spooky visuals and heavy strobe lighting. "Those are party details," Olivia observed, quickly writing down the address included in the chat. "So you're friends?" she asked. "Yes," the clerk admitted. "But I never knew anything about a missing child." "Thank you," Emily said. "I need to inform the police about this." "Please, no police," the clerk begged. "If they find out I helped him, I'll lose my job. I'm on probation. If I get fired, I'll go back to jail." Olivia finished noting the address and looked at the frightened clerk. "If you're innocent, you won't be in trouble." Emily was already dialing on her phone, hands shaking with a mix of fear and hope. "This is Emily Larson," she said when someone answered. "I need to report information about my missing son's case. I found a video clip and chat messages mentioning his name. There's an address where something's happening tonight." She gave them every detail. The clerk sank against the counter, defeated and scared, as officers streamed into the store. Within 15 minutes, sirens pierced the evening air. Patrol cars pulled into the lot and officers hurried inside. The clerk looked ashen, fear evident in every tremble. Detective Baxter was among the first in. Emily rushed to him, recounting everything she'd discovered. Other officers began questioning the clerk immediately. He answered, frightened, glancing at Emily repeatedly. "I don't know what's going to happen to that kid," Emily told Detective Baxter. "He's on probation, but he's been helping us." The detective nodded thoughtfully. "We'll keep that in mind. He did give us useful information. We need to investigate Eric further, but we don't have proof of wrongdoing yet." An officer approached with the address Olivia had written down. "This place is just outside town, near the woods. We'll contact Thomas Reed," another officer said, stepping away with a radio. "Let's head out," Detective Baxter told Emily and Olivia. "You can ride with me." They climbed into the detective's unmarked car and set off. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. Detective Baxter confirmed from Thomas Reed that the address belongs to his old vacation home, a family property near Maple Creek, unused for years. He says he didn't know his son Eric was using it, thought Eric lived in an apartment. "Copy that," Baxter replied. The drive took them away from the suburbs and onto winding country roads. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Trees closed in around the narrow lane until they reached a turnoff, a dirt road leading deeper into the woods. There it was, a run-down cottage, boarded windows, overgrown brush around it. In the dim light, it looked ominous. "There's the Beetle," Emily said, pointing to a green car parked haphazardly by the house. Several other vehicles were there too, yet no one was visible. Olivia whispered, "I see lights in the back." Patrol cars stopped, officers leaping out with weapons drawn. Detective Baxter turned to Emily and said, "Stay here." But Emily couldn't obey. She and Olivia slipped out and followed at a distance. Officers called out as they approached the cottage's front door. "Police! Anyone inside?" No answer. They entered cautiously, weapons raised, moving through dark, musty rooms filled with dust and cobwebs. Emily heard laughter and music coming from somewhere behind the house. She tipped toward an officer. "Do you hear that?" He nodded and motioned toward a broken window. Through the gap, they saw flickering lights in the nearby trees. "Stay back," an officer ordered Emily and Olivia. "For your safety and to preserve evidence, wait here." Reluctantly, they remained on the fringe as officers slipped out the back door and into the woods. The sounds grew louder. Music, laughter, then sudden screams. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" shouted voices echoed. The music cut off abruptly, then cries of confusion, people shouting. Radio chatter spiked as officers called for backup and paramedics. Emily watched, heart racing, as officers emerged carrying several young men in elaborate zombie makeup, rotting flesh, exposed bones, splashes of fake blood. In the flashlight's glow, they looked horrifying. Officers lined them up and handcuffed them, reciting rites. Among them, Emily recognized one face, Eric, the man from the yard sale. His eyes locked on Emily, anger flashing. "Who are you? You ruined everything," he yelled. "I'm Michael's mother," Emily said, stepping closer despite officers' warnings. "I believe you kidnapped my son." "We were just having fun," Eric snarled. Officers hauled him and his friends toward waiting cruisers. As the cruisers pulled away, an officer approached Emily urgently. "Ma'am, we found a young man out here. He claims to be Michael, but he's terrified. We need your help." Emily's legs went weak. Olivia caught her arm. "Go," Olivia said softly. "I'll wait here. You go find your son." Emily followed the officer through thick underbrush to a small clearing where a young man crouched by a smoldering fire pit, rocking back and forth, hands over his head. "You're all zombies," he kept saying, voice trembling. "You're going to kill me." I should have stayed hidden. A dark stain spread on his clothes from where he'd been hugging himself in fear. Emily knelt beside him and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Michael," she coaxed, "Mom's here, I'm alive." He lifted his tear-streaked face slowly, fear and confusion in his eyes. Though he was now 18 instead of 8, Emily recognized him instantly. His eyes, his smile's curve, the way his hair fell. "Michael," she whispered, tears in her voice. "Mom," he said, voice shaky. An officer nearby said quietly, "It looks like he's under the influence of a hallucinogen. His pupils are dilated, and he's clearly terrified." Emily took his hand. "You're safe now," she said softly. "No one will hurt you." "No," Michael whimpered. "It's the end of the world. Zombies took everyone. They experimented on us." Emily's heart broke. "Michael, it's not real. There are no zombies, no experiments. Uncle Eric lied to you." With patient words and the help of officers, they coaxed Michael to his feet. He clung to Emily, glancing around as if expecting monsters to leap from the shadows. They guided him back to the house's entrance. Outside, paramedics waited by an ambulance, radios crackling. They led Michael toward the vehicle gently. Emily climbed inside with him, refusing to let go. A medical worker knelt beside them to assess him. "He's still under the drug's effects," the paramedic said. "We need to take him to the hospital for evaluation and treatment." At the mention of the hospital, Michael grew agitated. "Again, no hospital. They'll do experiments on me," Emily soothed him, stroking his hair as she did when he was small. "No one will hurt you. Doctors want to help you feel better." The paramedic asked Emily, "Can we give him something to calm him for transport?" She nodded, watching as they administered a mild sedative. Moments later, Michael's body relaxed and his eyes fluttered closed. Detective Baxter appeared at the ambulance doors. "Mrs. Larson, you should go with him. My team will secure the scene. We're waiting for Thomas Reed to arrive." "I want to talk to him first," Emily said, torn between needing answers and needing to be with Michael. "I know," the detective replied gently, "but your son needs you now. You can talk to Reed later." Emily looked at Olivia, who nodded in agreement. "Okay," Emily said, then to Olivia, "Please come with us." "Of course," Olivia said, entering the ambulance. Paramedics secured Michael on the stretcher, and Emily held his hand as the doors closed. The ambulance doors shut, leaving behind the crime scene and questions that would have to wait. At the hospital's emergency entrance, paramedics rushed Michael inside as Emily tried to follow. A nurse gently stopped her. "Ma'am, please wait here. Let the doctors work. We'll let you know as soon as we can." Olivia and Emily were guided to a quiet waiting area away from the main ER. The chairs were hard and the walls pale, but Emily barely noticed. She sank into a seat, exhaustion overwhelming her. "I can't believe he's alive," she whispered. Olivia sat beside her and squeezed her hand. "You found him," Olivia said. "After all these years, you found Michael." They sat quietly for a moment. Then Emily turned to Olivia, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. If you hadn't forced me out of the house, if you hadn't insisted on that yard sale, I would never have found him." Olivia squeezed her hand. "Now focus on tomorrow. You're strong. You never gave up. You have your son back." Time seemed to stand still as they waited. Emily replayed every moment. Michael's terror, his confusion, the way he'd looked at her without recognizing her at first. What had that monster done to her boy? Finally, a doctor in a white coat and wire-rimmed glasses entered. "Mrs. Larson?" he asked kindly. When Emily nodded, he continued, "I'm Dr. Henderson. I treated Michael. He received a hallucinogenic drug that makes experiences terrifyingly vivid. That explains his extreme fear and paranoia. The good news is, aside from the drug's effects, we see no signs of physical harm." "Thank God," Emily breathed. The doctor continued, "He does have mild malnutrition, but we can treat that. He's now resting in a private room while the drug clears from his system." "May I see him?" Emily asked. "In a little while," the doctor replied. "Let me check in a bit." He left, and soon Detective Baxter reappeared with an officer. His expression was serious but kind. "Mrs. Larson, could we talk privately? We have a small consultation room." They followed him to a room with a round table and chairs. Once seated, Baxter opened his notebook. "We've learned much from our investigation," he began. "Thomas Reed's son, Eric, is responsible for what happened to Michael. When we questioned him, he admitted everything, although his motives are twisted." Emily leaned forward, desperate for details. "Eric said he was proud the day he took Michael, a decade ago," the detective continued. "It was Michael's 8th birthday at Cedar Park, yes?" Emily's voice trembled as she recalled that day. "It was the biggest party I ever planned for him. Everyone from our block was there. The kids ran around in the yard under the big oak tree." She paused as the memory overwhelmed her. "Eric claimed Michael was his brother from another life," Detective Baxter said. "In his twisted mind, he thought he loved Michael that way. He didn't plan to hurt him, but never intended to give him back." "How did he lure him away?" Emily asked, though her heart ached to know. "Eric was 21, the detective explained. He approached Michael as if he were an older friend. He invited him to play a secret spy game in the woods behind the park. Michael, trusting and eager for a new friend, went with him." "Michael always wanted a father figure," Emily said quietly. "His father was gone before he was born, and he had no siblings. He wanted someone to look up to." Detective Baxter nodded sympathetically. "For the next decade, Eric raised Michael in a sealed basement of a long vacant cottage someone in his family owned but never sold. He homeschooled him, even had fake identification for him." "A basement?" Emily whispered in horror. "Eric told Michael that there had been a zombie apocalypse. He said Michael's mother and everyone from the party had died. He cast himself as Michael's protector, shielding him from the zombies. He fed Michael lies about survivors hiding in small enclaves. At first, Michael believed it all," the detective continued. "But as he grew older, he wanted to help survivors, which is why Eric organized these scary zombie parties in the woods to scare him back into hiding. Eric invited his friends thinking it was just a horror-themed event. None of them knew Michael was actually being held captive. They thought it was just misguided fun at a neighbor's kid's expense." "That's so awful," Emily said, tears streaming down her face. Olivia held her hand. "What about Thomas Reed?" Emily asked suddenly. Detective Baxter's face grew complicated. "Reed says he had no idea Eric was doing this. He was busy with work and rarely home. Eric lived with his grandparents. They weren't close, even when Eric grew up." "Then why hide the device this morning?" Emily asked, voice hard. Reed flinched. "When you recognized it, I realized Eric did something terrible, but I still couldn't believe it was a kidnapping. I thought perhaps Eric had teased someone. I saw some disturbing images on Eric's computer once, cartoons and photos of children. He was always obsessed, but I never thought he'd actually take a child. I didn't want to believe it." He looked at Emily, remorse in his eyes. "I'm truly sorry for how I acted earlier and for my son's actions. There are no words to make up for it. He'll be held accountable." Emily nodded slowly, still absorbing everything. They all sat in stunned silence. "We've taken Eric and his friends into custody," Detective Baxter added. "Also the store clerk, Tony. He didn't know about the kidnapping. He was terrified when we questioned him because he's on probation for shoplifting. He only sold Eric costumes, thinking it was for haunted events. Eric never told him about Michael. Tony will cooperate fully." A knock interrupted them. Dr. Henderson entered, smiling gently. "Mrs. Larson, Michael is awake and asking for you." Emily leaped up, nearly overturning her chair. She followed the doctor down the hall, her heart pounding. Michael lay on the hospital bed, looking small and uncertain despite being 18. When Emily entered, he met her gaze. "Mom," he said softly. "Yes, sweetheart. It's me," Emily whispered, stepping closer. He studied her face. "I barely remember," he said. "I was 8 when Eric took me, but I remember your voice. You used to sing to me when I was scared." "That's right," Emily said, perching on the edge of the bed. "I sang lullabies every night." Michael still seemed anxious, glancing at the door and windows. "Eric said the world ended and you were eaten by zombies," he said. "Mom," Emily said, gently holding his hand. "It was all lies. There were never any zombies. I looked for you every single day for 10 years. You're safe now, truly safe." Dr. Henderson stepped in the doorway. "Michael will need therapy to address the trauma, but we're hopeful he'll recover with time and support." Emily kept her eyes on Michael. "I'll be with you through it all," she told him. "We have so much to catch up on. 10 years. Of birthdays, holidays, first days of school. We'll make new memories." Michael squeezed her hand. "I want to believe you. I want to be okay." "You are," Emily said, hugging him gently. As she held her son for the first time, in a decade, she realized how far they'd come. A mother's love had never wavered. Through 10 years of darkness, she held on to hope. Now, that hope had brought Michael back to her. Though the road ahead would be hard, they would face it together. Mother and son, finally reunited.